And so we have here that Jonathan proved his loyalty and love here to David, as we find that he was, it takes a lot to betray your own family. But what we found is that David loved Jonathan and Jonathan loved David to the point where um, even that, that his father knew that David was going to be the next king, and he knew it, but it was just that he had lost favor with God and his pride had gotten in the way. So this what became the problem. And then it goes on, it says that the two of them had made a covenant before the Lord, that we remember back in uh, 1 Samuel 18, about them making a covenant, that they wanted to make sure that they stayed in the will and the way of God. And it was a beautiful relationship. But unfortunately, Jonathan was not able to actually live out that covenant because he ended up dying before David actually took the throne. So he never got to do that. But then we have the Zephites betray David at this point, and it goes into 19 and to 23, and it says, then the Zephites came up to Saul at Geba, saying, is David not hiding with us in strongholds in the woods, in the hills of Hachilia, which is on the south of Jemison? Now therefore, O king, come down according to all that is desire of your soul, and come down, our part shall be to you to deliver him into your hands, into your kingly hands. So here's the Zephites, that once they were supposed to be helping David, now we find that they are actually turning their backs on him and actually betraying him. And Saul makes the thing where he says, and blessed are you of the Lord. Now, here he is someone that he's trying to give blessings to, that has basically betrayed David, because we find that David was innocent of the things that he was being accused of, but yet here it is that these people, when you think about it, Jonathan was faithful to him. But then we have the um, Zephites, were betraying him. And, that happens to us in our Christian walk, that we have people that way too, that they walk with us at one point and they betray us on the other end. So this is just a cycle that we actually see. And then Saul had the nerve to tell him to make sure you find out where he is, because he's rather crafty. And so then Saul goes out to pursue actually David. And so he rose and he went to Ziph before Saul, but David and his men were in the wilderness of Maon, in the plains of the south of Jerimoth. And Saul and his men went to seek him, and they told David. Then therefore he went down onto the rock and stayed in the wilderness of Maon. And when Saul heard that, he pursued David in the wilderness of Maon. Then Saul went on one side of the mountain and David and his man on the other side. So they're basically kind of chasing each other over a hill. And then what came to happen then, but a messenger came to Saul to tell him that the Philistines had invaded the land and they were attacking, and that he needed to come back immediately. So therefore, he abandoned the chase of David, and David once again was able to get away from him or escape for him. But what we have to look at this is that God was with him and always providing a way of escape for David. So that is 23. We're going to go to 24. So 24, we go on and it says, and then David doesn't kill Saul when he has the opportunity. And what it talks about in this particular scripture is that um, Saul is continuing to actually pursue David. After the Philistines and the defeat of the Philistines, they come back into the wilderness of Engadi, because this is where he is at this point. And then so as they're looking for him, they come to the sheepfold, which is like a cavern that they push the sheep in to keep them from being attacked and different things like that. So Saul passed this place, but what he didn't know was David and his men were actually hiding in this cave. And what happened was Saul had to relieve himself. So he came in and he actually relieved himself. But as he was taking care of his personal business, that his back was to David. And his men encouraged him, why don't you go ahead with the sword and you kill him? This is the opportunity. God has led you in him into our hands. But David is looking at this point and he says, no, not so. That is not what it is. So, but what he did was slowly crawl towards him and he cut off a piece of his robe. And then everybody was like, well, get him. But no, he kept his robe. David was very smart in his methodology of why he did this. But then as they come out, it says, David arose afterwards and went out of the cave and called Saul. He let him walk out. And then he calls back to him. He says, my Lord, my king. And when Saul looked behind him, David had stooped his face on the ground. So David was showing humble submission and honor to Saul, in spite of what he knew of Saul and Saul wanting to hurt him, that he still showed him. And then they go through this long orchestrated speech, and then he stretches out his hand and he actually offers to Saul his allegiance, but he tells him, see, I have this, your coat. I was close enough to kill you, but yet I did not. And then Saul's reaction was finally that he understood that David meant him no harm and that he was wrong. And that is basically what we have, that Saul honors David and in mercy towards him. And so Saul looks to the future. So this is a story of of David and Saul. So hopefully you've enjoyed this and you can find